But I hear it all the time. I'm a pastor, and I'm going to start off by saying this. I think the church needs to own over history the way they've dealt with other people's sins.
Yeah.
And I think a wise man once said, they stand in the ivory tower surrounded by their sins, only looking down on people with their sins. So I think the first step in this conversation is for us to say the church has to take ownership of not only sometimes what we've said, but how we've said it that have caused harm.
Crazy. Y'all know Kev on stage?
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, his whole like persona is based off being a church boy. I was watching his podcast and he was talking about how that's why he doesn't go to church anymore, because the pastors acting up. And I was like, if the guy who is all about church doesn't go to church anymore, we got a problem.
Oh, he was serious when he said that?
Yeah, he was serious.
Wow, that stinks.
Yeah, like he was dead serious.
Yeah, 'cause I seen him do skits and stuff to make fun of
Yeah.
the church ladies and stuff.
And he's been all about church.
People might be like,
So
who's
I'm
this
Cole
dude?
Jones.
Oh, I forgot
Who's
about
this dude?
that.
And I'm joined today by my illustrious co-host, Mr. Antonio James Andrews. And we welcome back for what? Is it the fourth time? Fifth time? Sixth time?
Not enough, but yeah, not enough.
It's
We need to do
been
some more.
a few times.
I love you guys, man. Pastor Stephon Bell, One Church ATL, Marietta, Georgia. I love hanging out with these two. You guys are my favorite podcast. I listen to every episode.
Hey, did y'all hear that?
OG.
Yes.
He said favorite.
It's about time we get some people to talk about some real issues.
Yeah.
So I'm down with y'all. So thank you for letting me hang out.
Of course. Thank you for coming. Look, we just so glad you're here. We're just so glad you're here.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
But yeah, so today we are going to be talking about, drum roll please. Did I already say that though? Cole, what we talking about?
We're talking about why is the church so freaking judgmental?
Let's keep it 100. We can do that. Do they still say keep it 100? Or is that like 2012-ish?
It's keeping 100, but a lot of people say like keep it the book.
Keep it a book. So I'm gonna say that I hear the kids in the school say twin. They call each other twin. So I'm gonna say twin. I'm keeping it a book. How'd I do?
That was A1.
Did I do that?
Okay.
That's the video.
Um,
No, that just really made my heart smile. Twin, I'm keeping it
The
the book.
Well, you know, thing is, on this subject, guys, as a pastor and in the schools, I hear that all the time. And that's why I don't go to church.
yeah, man.
Because people in church are judgmental.
That line is why this podcast was founded.
Talk to me, Doc.
That's the line. I remember it all too clear. It was 2017 when we released the first one, and all I was hearing is I don't go to church. That's why I don't go to church. That's why I don't go to church. And we purposely wanted to have conversations to talk about why we don't go to church and what the church could be doing better, and what you might not know about the church.
Right.
Now, hold that thought that you were about to say.
Who, me?
Yeah, you were mid-thought when I interrupted you.
Oh, no. That was good. I think with the kids, I always tell them this, and this is a standard I live by. Own your stuff. In other words, I should not be the one to call out when you know you're in a situation. I shouldn't be able to do that. I want you to be able to tell me over time, you know what, I messed up.
Yeah.
What I think the issue is historically, in every church, every denomination in history, we did not show love towards someone whose sin was different than ours.
Yeah.
And I think again the church has to own that.
Yeah.
AJ. That we as the church, we can't stand back and turn out. You know how you can see the look, right? When you scrunch your face up and you look people up and down, and and then it comes out of your mouth. Why you got that tight dress on up in church?
Yeah.
That is harmful.
Very.
So the church needs to own that part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They need to own that part. And so over time, I know growing up in the Baptist church, I did hear that. I saw that. It was not done in love.
Yeah.
And so I think we should have a conversation that starts off with the church is guilty as charged.
Yeah.
That over time, it has not done an excellent job of exhibiting love during the time of helping those through their own situation.
But I think the church hasn't done a good job, because the church has not been full of healed people. And so the church has been full of people who have trauma of their own.
Yes, sir.
Who are imbalanced, who are bipolar, and you didn't know they were bipolar. They had issues of their own, and so they said, man, that's wrong. We got to deal with that being wrong. But because they were not learned enough to say, how do I handle you so that I don't damage you? But because we're both but I'm already damaged, I'm gonna damage you to have the same kind of trauma I have.
Right.
And so you have fights breaking out in church. You have people calling people out in church. You have people doing crazy things that look not like Christ, because these people are saved, but they're not sanctified yet. They're not delivered yet. They haven't had the full envelope, if you will, of the love of Christ yet. And so I think we've for years we've been a church of broken people, which is the call of the church. Come unto me, all who are weary and broken heart. Like, everybody is supposed to come, but we have people in leadership who are inflicting harm on the sheep.
I think a person who judges, and y'all tell me if I'm wrong, I want to have this conversation. A person who judges may struggle with humility. It's hard for you to see yourself as needing help yourself. With your own stuff. To where you're so humble and you're in such a posture of the awe of God himself, who sees what you do. Now, if you know that, God, you see me when I'm hiding out by myself in the basement, logged on to www.theresheis.com, and you know God sees your flaws, and it should create a humility.
You would think.
We were studying the names of God.
Okay.
And we did a Hebrew study of it, and we looked at the tetragrammaton, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, where YHWH is what the tetragrammaton is. But in their culture, they wouldn't even say God's name.
No, because they revere him so
They
much.
didn't come out and say like we do the man upstairs. That would, if you were to get transported back in time to their culture, they would probably stone you to death right then. Calling Yahweh, Jehovah, the man upstairs.
No, he was more than a man.
Oh my gosh. John 4:24, spirit. And so if you look at how we see God, it could affect us in being more humble, for us to say, instead of judging you, I want to walk with you. Because I see that what you're doing is harmful to where you are today and possibly your future and your legacy. So I want to be there with you. Can I help you? Can I point out the fact that I see something and I want to walk with you and disciple you through this process? Can we do it together?
And see, I even want to park there a little bit.
Okay.
Because for the person who doesn't even know what does Scripture say, they just think that the Scripture's just, bondage. I want to park there a little bit further, because Christianity is a transformative faith.
Right.
We come to know, we have an encounter with Jesus Christ, and we have an encounter with him.
Right.
We're introduced to this power that's much greater than us, which is why they revered Yahweh so highly.
Sure.
You have this encounter with him, and then it ought to spark something to want to change in you. But your flesh is too weak to change by itself.
Right.
And so we engage in community, we engage in the spiritual disciplines to become better versions of ourselves, to be in the likeness of what Christ designed us to be, because he's, and I'm about to go too deep. So let me reel it back. But that encounter ought to propel you to want to be better. Sure. And so when somebody says that I see something in your life that may be detrimental, it is not that your proclivities, I know they feel good to you, but sometimes your proclivities, the things that you like, that weed habit, that sex habit, that whatever habit, somebody can see further than you can see to say, hey, that's going to wreck you.
Yes.
Hey, that's going to put you in a spot in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years where your marriage may not work, where your kids may hate you if you keep going this way. And so they can see that. And so when somebody says to you in church or in a faith group, they say, hey, I see something in you that's dangerous, and we want to help you walk through that. That's not a rebuke of you as a person.
Well, let me give you an example. And it used to be when I was growing up, 70s and 80s in church, it was typically what younger people wore. That was typically it.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing so many older aunties in the church they were very upset when they would see younger girls, teenagers, and others wear things that were revealing.
Mm-hmm.
I had an episode recently where I did tell one of our sisters I could trust, and this is something you brought up earlier we need to talk about, but I trusted her, and I called her to the side, and I said, I need you to help me with something. I can see her, bottom through her skirt because it's too short. Can you let her know men can see that, and we don't want her to be disrespected?
Okay.
And that's what we said. We're here to protect because people can see something you can't see from behind. And so it went so well. And what the young lady said is, do you have something I can put around me because I didn't bring anything?
Yeah.
And she said, I didn't know. I can't see behind me. But to come to that young lady and say, your skirt's too short. You don't need to be wearing that to church. That girl would never come back because number one, she's humiliated.
Yeah.
She's embarrassed, and she feels like she's been insulted. But for that sister who went over there instead of me, the sister went over there and said, "Hey, men can see under there, and we want to protect you from that." And she felt so good about that. And it was like, let me give you something to cover because I don't want you to be. Instead of saying you're the problem, it's just that we want to protect you. But one thing you said, AJ, that made a good point was, how would you feel, okay, hypothetically, you go to guestchurch.com, okay, United Church of God, and you walk in there and you're wearing no tie, no suit, no whatever. You just come as you are.
Okay.
And some guy walks up to you that you've never met and he says, is it something, do you need anything? Because apparently we have kind of a dress code here. You never met him before. Pastor comes out later and he gives an amazing message. Praise team's off the hook. You coming back?
I'm going to think about it, but I'm going to be, you know what, me, AJ, Antonio, I would come back, but I would definitely avoid whoever approached me first.
Okay.
But I'm going to do you one better.
What's
I
that?
got one of my good friends. We've been friends for 15 years. Was serving at a church. Had been a member of this church for better than 15 years. Lost his job.
Okay.
Was working in the audiovisual department, and it was a holiness church. So, there's a standard there.
There's a standard.
So he started wearing a polo and shorts to church. He's serving at church before church start, at church after church start, ends, goes to the pastor, says, I'm going through a hard financial thing. First thing the pastor says to him, wear your church clothes. Now, I don't have a job, but I'm giving the church everything I have.
Wear your church clothes.
Yeah, what does that even mean? Wear your church clothes. The next week, you've talked to the pastor at this point and said, hey, I need financial assistance. I've been serving for free. I lost my job. I'm about to lose my house. Wear your church clothes. Third week, at church early, doing the same thing, sees the pastor before he can say to you, wear your church clothes. Didn't I tell you? You need to be in church clothes when you come to church. You know he hadn't been to church in 5 years.
You know I would have did the same thing.
That's sad because the first thing that comes to my mind is if you seek to be humble, the first thing a humble person says is empathy.
Yeah.
Something may not be right. My desire is to now check on you.
Yeah.
Because I've seen you in your church clothes before.
Right.
And so apparently you haven't been wearing those church clothes. I want to make sure you're okay.
Yeah.
I don't care about your uniform. But again, that's one of those things where, and I think we need to bring this up, is traditions of what we believe is traditionally correct.
Right.
Without in being in a place where you're not pliable and able to shift, that causes harm. And it usually happens from people who are traumatized and maybe set in their ways based on traditions. And so how many people you think in the 1990s who started coming to church because they heard Kurt Franklin for the first time stopped going to church because people started saying, I don't want to hit none of that old bumpity bump. So you've heard it before. We said the same beat, bumpity bump. And so, man, it's just traditions and people set in our ways to not understand that the next culture causes harm.
But even with that, I think that there's a way to inculcate tradition into a newer wave so that one can be appreciated by the other.
Yes.
But when you completely reject a person's culture of their generation, Either way, young person reject the old person, older person reject the young person. We're always being gridlocked.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be able to hear anything you have to say.
True.
But I think the way that you really push through that is getting back to scripture. What is scriptural? Like, what is God calling us to do?
Yeah. Absolutely.
God ain't calling you to put on no suit and tie to come to church. Nah, I am going to ask.
How y'all dress over there?
Okay, I'm trying to say this and not being sensitive. Where his church clothes went? Like,
Well,
I
just
I get it.
to
but
add
like,
relief to the
okay.
story, they had just built a new audiovisual room and there was no air conditioning. And it was summertime in Alabama. And the little closet that they had just converted into the audiovisual room
No AC.
had no AC. And so he started wearing shorts and t-shirt because he would come out of church soaking wet.
Yeah. So did he not have that conversation with him? Like, you ain't got no air, brother.
No, they had the conversation.
Right.
It was ignored. And so, and not to go into any more of the detail.
Okay.
And so, but what became the issue was wearing your church clothes.
See, maybe God knows to put certain people in those predicaments because I'm going to be like, Pastor.
Don't you start talking violent stuff.
No, I ain't going to talk violent,
Okay.
but it's just going to be Pastor. You want me to sweat?
Right.
I can't get a fan?
Yeah.
And like, also my thing is, the moment he would have been like, wear your church clothes, where's the AC? Where's the AC? Where's the AC? I'm going to answer your question with a question now. Maybe that's just me being Gen, whatever generation I am, because I thought I was Gen Z, millennial. Okay, I'm Z, okay.
Yeah.
Gen Z, maybe that's just that in me that's riling it up, that 99, 2000s. But it's just like, where's the AC? You want me to fall out of here?
But then I think as a shepherd leader, and I'm sure in your role you have to understand this, I've got to exhibit Christ likeness all the time.
Right.
And I always ask myself, before you say that is going to draw them closer to Christ. And so oftentimes in the church, I believe over time we didn't think that way.
No.
We not think, are my words going to cause harm?
Yeah.
And that comes from a place of pride. Humility and pride don't go together. But if you're humble and you feel hearish, I can come to you with a different approach. It's gentle, it's loving, and I want to help you develop.
Yeah.
But if you're a prideful person, you walk around with your chest stuck out with that sucking a lemon face, you're going to go around pointing out other people's flaws. And of course, we got to talk about this, talking about other people's sins.
Yeah.
That you don't have.
Yeah.
So, real quick, I do want to play devil's advocate, though, because I don't want maybe some of our older saints that are watching to feel like we beating up on them.
Oh, it's time to flip it.
We kind of.
I low-key feel like, what if they didn't know no better?
Who?
The older saints. And I say that because if we're thinking about, we're discussing our experiences in the black church. As black Americans, we have gone through so much trauma, and we really may have not even had the access to know that we were wrong.
Yeah.
And I see that just thinking about, so for y'all that may not know, I was raised by my grandparents. It is a big generational difference from their generation to mine. So I think a lot of the times when I was growing up, we had disconnect in certain areas because of the generational gap. And I think that, like, the gap that my parents would have filled was kind of what was needed in a way of, like, each generation, I think, is a little more understanding and a little more aware. It was conversations I could have with my granddaddy, up until the day he passed, that it would have went over his head and he would have just had his answer because that was just how he was.
Yeah.
So, and my Uncle Step can attest, that man was bullheaded for real.
Well, this is what I was saying. I'm just telling you because I'm a little bit older, a lot of bit. There was, in the generation before me, remember this generation was going through Jim Crow.
Yeah.
And they had to fight for everything. So there was a standard.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying you probably didn't hear in the 1950s and 60s older people getting on younger people about wearing clothes too tight because there was a community standard.
Yeah.
It was a couple of things. Number one, African Americans had to work harder and be smarter to get to move higher.
Right.
The second thing is when you leave your house, you represent your family.
Boy, if that's not
and
my
you
mama.
represent your community. What has happened is, I believe that over time, this standard has been erased.
Yeah.
The community had standards. And so these older people we're talking about, aunties and uncles, they're telling you, what happened to the standard, young lady? Why are you in the store wearing that? We have a standard.
But and I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's a parenting problem.
Talk to me.
And I'm because I'm 29, but I remember being on vacation at family reunions and having cousins that were wearing do-rags and stuff in the hallway, and we weren't allowed to leave our room with a do-rag or a thing on your head. We never walked out the hallways in pajamas.
No.
Like my mom, if I didn't iron, I don't care how late it is, you gonna iron and you gonna
Yes, sir.
starch.
Yes.
And your hair is gonna be like, the fact that I hadn't had a haircut, I got an appointment tomorrow. Like that wasn't even a thing in our household. Like
Yes.
you
Excellence.
everybody was getting
Always.
getting a haircut or going to the hairdresser every week or every 2 weeks. Your clothes were going to the cleaners, or they were being washed and they were being pressed. You wasn't dogging shoes. Your dog shoes were for in the yard. There was a standard, and the standard was even so that when you were responsible for picking out your own stuff and you taking care of it, you still went through inspection before you left the house.
Absolutely.
To the point now, I prefer to wear a suit over wearing anything else, because I know I can do that right. If I can't do anything else right.
In the words of my grandma, is that the look you going for? I remember that.
That's the look you going for.
But I think, I don't want to say, I think, yes, it can be a parenting problem, but I feel like it's more of like an access problem.
Talk to me.
All right.
I say that because I think when thinking about my access that I had with my grandparents, the access that you had with your parents, they were well off. And usually the people that you see not meeting that standard are people that cannot afford it. And I also think because we were okay in the financial department, there were a lot of other factors that did not become a part of our stories. Like a lot of the people that have low income are usually the ones that are having babies younger. Because they're usually lock-key kids that are not having that parental guidance. And I think a lot of that plays back to their access to stuff. And I think over time, the numbers of single families and all of that stuff has increased over time. And so I think the lowering of the standards is a direct reflection of like the ability to have access to stuff.
So you're saying it's a socioeconomic?
Yeah.
I think I agree and I disagree.
Okay.
Because my dad talks about people in the projects they were in the projects, but you walked in and you would have thought they were kings and queens the way that they kept what they had in the project. And based on some of the folks that I mentor here, that's not the case, at least in some of the places that I've gone as of late. And so, but there was a sense, like you were talking, there was a sense of communal pride. Okay, I don't have much, but this is what I have.
And that was going to be my rebuttal question.
Yeah.
What did their family structure look like? Because I think you can be poor, but having two parents in the household.
But if you were in the projects, there was no man.
Yes, but like you said, there was a sense of community pride.
Okay.
So while one household may be lacking something, back then it takes a village to raise a child. Now it's a don't say nothing to my child or I'm gonna box you out.
But and I'm not trying to play. I just want to.
This is good discourse.
Yeah.
It's real.
I think about my granddad who passed away last year. My granddad came from adjunct poverty. His father, okay, I ain't gonna say that. He didn't have neither one of his parents in his life. He's raised by his grandmother, and he was so poor that he had wires in his shoes, cardboard on the bottom. But he was the most pressed, put together kid you would ever imagine. That when he got some clothes, the first thing he did was go get new pants and clothes so that he could be sharp. To the day that he died, that man didn't walk out of his house, or maybe not the day he died, but close to the day he died. Pressed, pressed, shoes shine. He's the man who taught me how to shine my shoes. Everything was always neat and put together. From the time he was in poverty to the time he died well off.
Now your granddaddy was sharp. I ain't gonna lie. But I think, really quick, I just want to say, I think as somebody, okay, I was never in poverty. I'm not even going to sit up here and act like that. But I think it also comes to a person. I would want to look at all of the kids that your grandma raised, because I think there are some children that are in certain circumstances. They see that and they're like, I got to do better than this because I don't want to live like this forever. And there's other people that are like, they haven't seen better, so they may not know better, but they don't have the drive to reach something new. For me, I feel like because I had the background I had, I was always going to make sure I had a job. I was always going to make sure I went to school. And for one, that's because of what I saw in the lifestyle I grew accustomed to, but also I saw what not having those things led me to. And I didn't want to live like that forever. So I can't speak for your granddad, but I would almost want to throw the thought out there that I think it's because possibly that was what he saw. He like, I do not want to live like that.
Oh, for sure.
Well, let me kind of bring it back a little bit, because this is not a conversation per se about attire and how you dress.
Right.
It's about a standard of excellence that these people had to, that they didn't have to, but they embraced, voluntarily, that we are great people. We have pride, we have dignity, and we have excellence.
Yeah.
And so with that, I believe that they still hold on to those principles, and I hold on to them. It's just that I know how to communicate with someone. I realize you're not living up to the community standard.
Yeah.
And so instead of me making that, I articulate that to them directly. I say, now is my opportunity to walk with them and share with them some truths about history. The issue is, and I want to flip this conversation, guys, because in our community is the old and the young. I truly believe that this generation that's coming behind me and the ones behind them, Generation Alpha, we are not teaching them to own when they're not excellent.
Yeah.
That's true.
That's it.
That's an issue. So I'm flipping the conversation because I'm just going to challenge your listeners to say, I need to create some standards of what is excellent and what is not. For someone to be able to see that young lady I'm talking about, and she knew it, if she knew it, if her skirt is so high, I can see just below her panty line.
Ooh.
Can we say panty line on this podcast?
Yeah.
And so if I can see that, she needs to say that's not the standard of a person who's trying to be excellent. In the community, if you're someone who's walking around and using certain language in public, you've got to say to yourself, and I tell the kids this, you've got to learn how to self-discipline. So you've got to say to yourself, I'm not going to use that language in public because I'm supposed to be upholding a community standard of excellence. The problem is we don't think like that anymore. So we have a bunch of young people who feel like you're judging me when only someone misteaching them a standard of excellence.
So I guess I want to ask the question, is judgment always bad? Because when we look at the word judge, I think of a competition and somebody is rating. And so if there's a standard in whether, if there's a standard, it may be judgment, but what is the heart posture?
Right.
Like, and I know judgment has such negative connotations to it, but in some ways it is judgment. But if my heart posture is, I really want to see you do better, that's not a bad thing.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Another thing about that is, if we understand that what the end goal is, as from my generation, the end goal is to do a couple things. One, you said earlier, AJ, and that is, I want to create a relationship. I don't want to, in passing, say correction, and I've never asked you your name.
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity to bridge a gap with that. But judgment, if you look at God himself, the Bible describes him as a God of love, a God that is just. Just meaning he's fair.
Yeah.
And so if you're just coming with criticism, that's not God.
Yeah.
I need to come to you and be fair and say, maybe in empathy, you don't know the standard. So can I walk with you to tell you, you are excellent, you are beautiful, you're not cheap. I want to be with you to increase. I had a conversation with some young ladies the other day, and I used words like this. I told them, I tell my daughter this, and shout out to Summer Bell, Dion Cosmetics, look her up. She is, I told her when she was growing up all the time, baby, don't be low-hanging fruit. They have to climb to get to you. And that's what I was telling the girls the other day. I'm like, we need to set a standard with our sisters. I am not low fruit. I will not be treated like low fruit.
Yeah.
I will have standards where he's going to either play by my standards or he can't play at all.
Yeah.
Now, was that judging that young lady? No. But I walked with her, and she's like, I get it. I was loving first, and I never really got around to judging her.
And that, I'm glad that you brought that point up. I think that is the biggest issue, is that there is no community.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
A lot of the times, people, like you said, I don't even know your name, but you're giving me your opinion or your judgment. A part of knowing how to approach someone is being in community with them.
Sure.
If we are in community, you know my triggers, you know what I'm soft, sensitive about, you know what I built up callous about.
You know,
so,
your socioeconomic situation.
Yes.
All that.
So you are able to discern what I can receive at that time.
Right.
And it's not always about what somebody's able to receive, because sometimes you do need that harsh, hard love. But a part of love is not always coddly.
Yeah.
So I think we also got to get that through our minds.
Right.
But a part of being a community, you know the person. And then I can know your heart posture. I can't tell your heart posture if you are Willie Sue off the street and you just walk with me like, you need a suit on. You need a slip. Okay.
Right.
But like, if it's Uncle Stefan, like, yo, Doc,
Yeah.
you got a little change, bro. Just go get a suit. Like, or come
not.
on, this suit long.
right.
Or even like earlier this year, I was in a real bad place, and y'all know I had let my hair grow out, real past where I normally let my hair grow out, and somebody said something out of the way to me that it was really kind of offensive. But I was like, I gotta get a haircut. But one of the kids I mentor said, "Cole, you look like us."
Right.
And I was like, time to get a haircut.
Not that we were starting to matter like, nah, I can't look like y'all. They not like us. Come on, Kendrick.
But it was all in the heart of what they said. When the older man said it to me, I was offended. I was like, okay, I need to make a hair appointment. But I was like, man, you shouldn't have said that. That was really rude.
Yeah.
When they said it, it was really kind of endearing, but it also put in perspective, ooh, I got a problem that goes against my personal standard. I think it all depends on how people say.
It's very important.
Yeah.
That's how you say it. But also, I still want to go back to, we've got our next generations need to be able to own their stuff.
Oh, I agree.
And so let's just put in this. You are a weed head. You smoke more weed than the next person higher than you. And you're in a situation where you're doing that. And you come to church one Sunday and you smell reeking of weed.
Yeah, now the whole sanctuary.
What's that?
Now the whole sanctuary smells like
Not
a
a whole, and everybody knows it, but you may have been,
So Jamal Bryant got what he wanted. Smoking
section in church. And so I believe, and this is where there's a thin line between they're judging me and they're sharing with me that what you're doing is not right. And so if you are, and it's nothing right about someone who's addicted to marijuana. Nothing. And so can I tell this brother in church, man, I can smell you, bro. But but the tone is important. But can he accept, man, I came to church smelling like weed today, and that's on me. That's on me. We've got to figure out to take ownership when someone just in fairness, in love, says, man, I can smell you smell like you've been smoking, bro,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't get offended.
Yeah.
We've got to build that type of character too, to say I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I smoke a lot, and got so drunk last night, it's coming through my pores,
Yeah.
and I can tell you, bro, I can smell you've been drinking. Don't get upset,
Mm-hmm.
because what? Own your stuff that you got drunk last night and came to church smell like alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Is that true? Is that fair?
I mean, it's
Yeah, that's
fair.
fair.
I don't think that there are a lot of people that are in that place.
I don't think that's true though.
You don't?
No, I think it's all about how you say something to
I agree.
someone.
Well, I agree with that.
And I think that's usually what it boils down to. No one likes to be embarrassed.
Yeah.
And if it's done in a way that is embarrassing, of course they're going to have
A
an
defense.
outward reaction.
A defense mechanism.
Yeah. So, like, for example, Uncle Silver, you're a pastor.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on stage, like, well, y'all are pastors. I'm not saying you're not. But let me start over because I didn't got distracted. I'm trying to be too soft.
Tell
Go
the
hard,
truth.
dog.
Yeah.
Go hard.
But my thing is, if from the pulpit y'all are like, and whoever in here smelling like weed don't need to come back.
Oh,
That's
no.
a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah, that is a
Or,
problem.
second example, if it's in a group and you like, bro, you know you smell like weed,
That's embarrassing.
that's a problem.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
But someone that, A, being in community, 2, if somebody that I've been in community with pulls me aside and is like, look, you may not realize you're smelling like this,
Yeah.
but you smell like weed.
Yeah.
And we know that that's not the standard that we have set.
Yeah.
So what do we say then to those who hang on the fringes of community so that they do
Good
not
point.
get accountability?
What do you mean?
They just come every once in a while, their auntie.
Yeah, or the person, you know, and you got the people that come every once in a while, but you have the people who come but they never join.
Mm-hmm.
They never engage in Bible study or small group. They come on Sunday morning, they slip in, they slip out. They never engage in discipleship opportunities to become part of the community.
But I think a true disciple or who's the person that does the discipling? the discipling? Huh?
Disciple maker.
Okay, but the disciple. Am I saying it wrong? It
You
feels
saying it
wrong.
right. You saying it right.
Disciple maker. It feels so funny coming out. I think it's up to you being the mature person in this scenario, not because you're older, but because you may be more spiritually mature, to then go the extra mile and reach out and try to build that community. You see this person slipping in every day and you're not going to say nothing to them. You see them not being engaged in community and you aren't going to reach out and be like, hey, I didn't see you. What's up, bro? Like, I'm Cole. I'm Antonio. I'm Pastor Stepan. Like, you have to be able to take that step. If you know better, you do better.
I mean, I agree.
So now,
Yeah.
Now, if the person then is like, "Why you talking to me?" then
And that happens.
okay, you know what? I then still being gracious. I always tell my staff this: they're mad at the situation, not at you personally. Don't take it personal, because I think a lot of the times when we do face rejection, then we get in our feelings and we're just as wrong as them. So I think a lot of times you do have to take yourself out of it. If they react like that, well, listen, I apologize. I'm gonna be praying for you, but I do want a chance to get to get to know you.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think you being persistent in that, you keeping your kindness, you keeping your love. Because I think a lot of times once people face that rejection, then they become nasty, and that's not gonna lead nobody to Christ.
Right.
But I wrote down a question earlier because I do think it's up for our generations to be able to own our stuff. But how can we own our stuff truly if we've never seen anyone else own their stuff?
Continue.
Going back to what we were discussing in like the very beginning of there are a lot of people that, or I think this may have been a part of the off-camera combo that we had, but there are a lot of people that want to discuss certain sins, but I see you outwardly living out your own sin. So how can you chastise me or chasten me about mine and what I'm doing wrong, and I haven't even seen you own yours? So, for example, how are you coming to me about smelling like weed and you smell like alcohol? Like, it's the same thing. How can you come to me about... I'm not saying we know nobody do this stuff, so y'all be cute. But how can you come to me about beating my wife when you cheating on yours?
Well, I think that those examples you gave, I know you usually give them on the fly, but how often is it that a person who's being mentored or disciple and they're being told from an older person, bro, can you pull your pants up a little bit? I can see your underwear. How often does that kid know that this person has a sin? I don't think that's often that you'll know their sin.
Yeah.
But if there is a situation where that's the case, I think you've got to own yours instead of. And I think we do this thing this season, man. Deflection is big.
Yeah.
How about you? How about them? Everybody does it. Instead of just saying, man, you're right. I smell like weed. That's it. We're dealing with the fact that I smell like weed up in church. I'm not trying to deflect. I'm not going to get sensitive because I own my stuff. I smoked a 20 last night and half of it this morning before I came to church. I got to own mine. Why would I get defensive to want to deflect on you when you're right now you're trying to tell me, man, I can smell you? Or and this whole so many different examples that I'm telling you, look, bro, young 26-year-old, my daughter was at the club last night, and I know you married, and she saw you. And I want to tell you, people see you when you're doing what you were doing last night with that other young lady. You want to talk to me about it? What is he supposed to do now? Well, have you ever cheated? No, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about what my daughter saw last night. So my thing is man, being able for us to say, my bad, is very important. But at the same time, for us to be able to point out people's things that they may be having they may have blind spots. For us to do it with love and say, man, privately, I love what you said. To privately pull someone to the side and say, hey, man, can I talk to you for a sec? And share it that way. I think that decreases the judgment issue. But I also understand in a source of upward empathy from young to old, man, you're dealing with people who had standards. It was ladies were ladies, men were men, and they were raised that way. So, but it's our fault for not educating the history to the young folks that this was us. You didn't go to school and cut up in class because you had to you got worn out when you got home because you disrespected the community standard.
I don't feel like they got threatened.
What's that?
I said I don't feel like they got threatened. I remember getting threatened on the first day of kindergarten. You act up in there, I'm gonna get you. Your grandmama gonna get you. Your mama gonna get you. Like, I don't think that I don't think that there wasn't a fear that you were gonna get stopped.
Yeah.
Or they were just gonna tell one person. Like,
as a former cutter upper, the threats don't always work. My granddaddy gave his phone number, his personal phone number, to every teacher with me right there, and I still could have.
oh wow.
I have no words.
And of course, being your grandfather's son-in-law, see, you had issues because your granddaddy is deceased. And I'm still scared of him. So something was wrong with you, Doc.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
It was
something wrong with you.
Yeah, I will. So I think my generation, we just don't fear a lot. I was scared of my granddaddy. I truthfully, I was. Still am.
But this is what I grew up with, guys. We were instilled with a sense of honor, not fear, not respect.
Yeah.
It was honor.
Yeah.
I honored people who were older than me. That's why I was yes sir and yes ma'am.
Yes.
But there was a generation that decided to cut out honor.
Yeah.
You don't have to honor anybody.
Yeah.
And so therefore it's no more yes sir, no yes ma'ams, no thank yous, no pleases. And so what has happened is you have a generation of, it's not that you were not scared, but I'm gonna be honest with you, it's not at you, but you're a victim of a culture that was not taught honor. My dad, my granddad, and still today I call people sir. I call you sir. I call you sir because I honor you. This generation is not really, that standard of honor is gone.
Yeah.
And so when an older person at a church says something to a younger person, when I was growing up, it was like, yes, ma'am. I was eating candy in the back row, and it's not supposed to be eating candy in the back. Yes, ma'am. I'm not going to get mad at you. That makes no sense.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I'm going to honor you because you are, in the African culture, you are auntie. Auntie, you get all my respect. But we're now Americanized and taking on some of the American and European standards. Well, honor is not what it used to be. And so I'm just going to encourage my young people who would listen to this. There used to be a time where in our community, honor meant something.
Yeah.
And if they were older than you, they didn't have to earn it, your respect. When they walked in the room, they were respected because they were auntie.
Man, maybe it is a parenting issue.
I think it is.
Okay. You embarrassing me, Cole. I'm just kidding.
There you go, showing me up on the podcast. I quit.
No, I'm just kidding. But, wow, okay, that was actually really good. I do think it is a lack of honor. Because I'm just sitting right here reflecting on some of my interactions. And I do think that our generation does have, like, selective honoring. I was going to say honorage. Why do I make up words? Selective honoring or homage. Thank you. See,
there it is.
That's why we got to start back reading. Selective homage. Because if I'm looking at myself, you know what? No, because I'm all about fairness. I believe if you're going to discipline me, discipline everybody. And I think I'm not going to speak for everybody because that's just a me thing, and I'm going to leave it alone. Just pray for me.
Let us pray.
I'm working through
it.
Okay. But, yeah, that was my point, and I worked it out in my head, and it's like I don't even have to say that.
Yep.
There's a missing piece in our community of honor, and I think there'll be less of a labeling of you're judging me if you realize that auntie and uncle mean they want to uphold a community standard.
And that they want you to succeed.
They want you to be successful
Within it, yeah.
A lot of times you hear old people say this. I hear this all the time. They'll never get a job looking like that, and they're saying that because they care about your success.
Yeah.
And the work ethic, all these things were instilled in my generation. I think the last generation of those, because we were in this. Remember this, guys. I was raised within walking distance of all my aunts, uncles, grandparents. I could walk if they weren't in the country somewhere. And now you guys don't even know your aunts and uncles like that. And so you're not getting that download of the cultural systems.
Yeah.
And so it's a failure that we have to address it in ways that say this. How can the younger generation say, I need you to pour into me, and where we say, I think you need me to pour into you, and I'm not here to judge you.
Yeah.
I'm here to disciple you. And I think that's the missing piece.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
That's good.
Well, that is the episode.
That's the episode.
And y'all, I want you in a church.
Find your church.
Find you a church. It don't have to be any church. Just find a church.
Yes.
We'll catch you next week.
We'll catch you next week.